In 1953, the CIA orchestrated a covert operation that overthrew a democratically elected government in Iran, paving the way for decades of U.S.-backed dictatorships. But why would the U.S. orchestrate such a controversial move, and what were the consequences? We're doing CIA's Operation Ajax today on MKUSUAL. It was a 1953 coup. It's one of the most well-known examples of U.S. interventionism during the Cold War and has had lasting implications for both the U.S. and Iran relationships in the Middle East. Didn't we just bomb the Houthis?
I can't even keep up anymore.
That's a whole other episode. Do you see that Trump accidentally texted war plans to somebody?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
It didn't seem like war plans. It seemed like
They just kind of texted that it was going to happen.
Well, but it also sounded like they were trying to protect shipping routes. Like once the tariffs were lifted on certain places, that there would be more traffic, so they were just going to position the Navy.
Well, that's kind of the problem is the Yemen, the Houthis, I know this isn't about Project Ajax, but the Houthis have been like blocking these shipping paths for some time.
So it would be an act of war.
Well, like attacking ships and stuff.
Yeah,
and so,
okay.
But I mean, they are Iranian backed. I mean, we've been talking about going to war with Iran since I've been an adult.
Yeah,
Since I've been in high school.
Yeah, it's always been like, well, Iraq bad, obviously, but also Iran is right there.
The axis of evil.
Yeah, and I don't know Iran and Iraq's relationship at all, but.
Well, now it's I believe it's good now because, Iraq and Iran went to war in the 80s. Saddam and Iran did not like each other, but we made them friends because the Shia people were actually the majority in Iraq, but its leadership was Sunni. So let's get into Operation Ajax. I guess I mentioned all this to bring up the point that they had a democratically elected government. Iran in the early 50s, post-World War II Iran. After World War II, Iran was experiencing internal political strife with a growing demand for democratic reforms. Mohammad Mossadegh, an Iranian lawyer and politician, was elected as Prime Minister of Iran in 1951. He became immensely popular due to his opposition to foreign influence in Iran. Red flag. We cannot have that. You cannot be a third world country who doesn't want influence. Mossadegh sought to nationalize Iran's oil industry.
That's a death wish.
which was previously controlled by the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company, a British-owned corporation, which, by the way, I believe is BP now. This would eliminate foreign control of the country's most valuable resource and keep the profits in Iran. This decision was extremely controversial, especially for the United Kingdom, which had a strong economic interest in Iranian oil. I think you said it best. That's a death wish. So next time you go to a BP, thank them for overthrowing democratic Iran. The roots of the coup, UK's economic interests.
They literally renamed to BP after the nationalization of Iranian oil and, quote, a major political crisis.
Oh, we're getting into it.
They merged with Amoco. Amoco is implicated also.
Oh, great.
Anyway.
So Britain had deep economic interests in Iran, especially the oil industry. We're just going to call them BP from now on.
Yeah.
BP lost millions after Mossadegh nationalized the oil fields. The British government imposed an international embargo following this on Iranian oil, crippling Iran's economy. So if we can't have... I had looked this up earlier. I might have it here somewhere. The amount of profit that they were making off Iranian oil. This is essentially America's first oil war. So let's see here. Okay. British oil companies were paying Iran 16% of the profits while keeping 84%. Jesus. So apparently they did try to negotiate with Iran. Iran refused, which is their right. Then they started boycotting Iranian oil, which crippled the economy. Then they sent warships to threaten Iran, but Mossadegh stood firm. And what did UK do after he stood firm? They went to the United States for help. So let's put this in context. During the Cold War, both the United States and Soviet Union were vying for influence of the Middle East. The U.S. feared that Iran's nationalization of oil and the rise of Mossadegh's left-leaning government would push Iran toward the Soviet Union. But isn't that always what we say, kind of?
No.
No.
They're gonna like what the Russians. They're gonna like that the Russians pay them for their oil at a reasonable price.
Or just like he made them independent. Then they'll say, I mean, we still do this to countries to this day. Didn't we do this to Gaddafi? Anytime somebody wants to nationalize stuff, we're like, you're a dictator. Nationalism bad. But it's like the alternative to nationalism is we steal 85%. If you don't let us steal 85% from you, well, then you're bad and you're a dictator.
Yeah.
So the CIA and British MI6 feared that Mossadegh's popularity could inspire other countries in the region to pursue similar anti-Western policies, potentially turning Iran into a communist satellite state.
Called him the C word.
Why are we like this? Why are we like this? It's not even like he was talking to the Soviet Union or something.
Right.
It's not even like he changed the flag to a red crescent or
Yeah.
So the US and UK decided to act. Britain sought to remove Mossadegh and restore the Shah to full power. They first attempted diplomatic measures, but after Mossadegh's refusal, they turned to more drastic measures. The CIA, under the guidance of President Dwight D. Eisenhower and his administration, launched a covert operation codenamed Operation Ajax to overthrow Mossadegh. The CIA operation was led by Kermit Roosevelt Jr. So Teddy's grandson, CIA operative. Here were the goals of Operation Ajax. Number 1, remove Mossadegh from power. 2, reinstall the Shah. 3, prevent Soviet influence in the region. Here's how the coup unfolded. The CIA began working with the Iranian military, members of the Iranian elite who opposed Mossadegh, and Shah loyalists to plan the coup. The coup relied heavily on propaganda, which sought to undermine Mossadegh's legitimacy. The CIA used bribes, staged demonstrations, and rumors to discredit Mossadegh and rally public opinion against him.
Staged demonstrations.
What was that summer called where there were all the demonstrations in the Middle East and it was all on Twitter?
Yeah.
What was that? Was it 2009?
I mean, the Arab Summer.
Arab Spring.
Arab Spring, yeah.
We had something to do with that. It was that we were like, let's see if we can use Twitter to overthrow some governments. Here's the Shah's role. So initially the Shah hesitated. In the early phases of the coup, he fled Iran to Rome, fearing for his life as Mossadegh's government was still very strong. The CIA had to intervene and convince the Shah to return to Iran. They used their resources to pressure him to comply with the coup plan. The coup began on August 19th, 1953, with coordinated attacks by military forces and Iranian civilians paid by the CIA. Despite initial setbacks and Mossadegh's efforts to resist, the coup forces quickly took control of key government buildings, and Mossadegh was arrested after a few days of fighting in the streets of Tehran. The Shah was restored to power, and Mossadegh was imprisoned. Mossadegh was eventually exiled to the palace of Ahmadabad, where he lived under house arrest until his death in 1967. The CIA's success in overthrowing Mossadegh marked the first successful coup carried out by the CIA, establishing a precedent for future U.S. involvement. After the coup, the Shah became increasingly autocratic and brutal. He ruled Iran for another 26 years, heavily relying on the U.S. for support, especially for military aid and economic stability. The U.S. continued to support the Shah's regime, even as it became increasingly repressive. Savak, the Shah's secret police, was trained by the CIA and became notorious for torture and surveillance of opposition groups. The coup and the subsequent years of U.S. support for the Shah led to growing resentment among Iranians, which ultimately contributed to the 1979 Iranian Revolution and fall of the monarchy. The Islamic Revolution, led by the Ayatollah Khomeini, resulted in the establishment of the Islamic Republic of Iran, a theocratic government which has remained in power ever since. U.S.-Iran relations, obviously not so great since then. We famously had the hostage crisis. The coup left a deep scar in U.S.-Iran relations, with many Iranians viewing the U.S. as an oppressive imperial force in their country. Revolution and anti-American sentiment. The overthrow of Mossadegh and the Shah's subsequent regime were major factors in the rise of anti-Americanism in Iran, which culminated in the 1979 Iranian hostage crisis. The coup in Iran remains one of the most significant examples of U.S. intervention in the Middle East and has had a lasting impact on the regional political dynamics. You have a list of regime change?
I was hoping, it's like giving me too much information. I was hoping it would just be a list with dates, but this has been going on.
Apparently this was our first little foray. How did that work out for us? We created an enemy.
Right.
So imagine you're our age. You're in your like 30s. You're in Iran. Your grandparents are like, oh yeah, when I was a kid, we had democracy. And then you're like, what happened? And then you're like, well, the Americans overthrew the government.
Yeah, okay, Grandma. Let's get you some dinner.
Because they wanted oil.
We know how you get when your sugars get low.
And then not only did we put in the Shah, we trained his police to torture people.
Yeah.
So imagine if all your grandparents and your parents were like, that was their life.
Yeah.
I mean, why wouldn't you hate us?
Right. You're like, oh, we like this guy. We're going to elect him. He's helping us secure our economy by sharing the profits of the oil that's under the land that we are on.
And the alternative is this autocratic dude who literally tortures and kills your friends and family.
Yeah. We did not bring stability to the Middle East by doing this. It was for oil. It was a fucking resource grab. Something I wanted to mention. You've ever heard of a guy named John Perkins? He's the Confessions of an Economic Hitman author. Okay. He talks about Iran. And it the first thing that you mentioned is that they destabilize the economy. So once if people are worried about where their next meal comes from, they get real fucking cagey. If they went from having good jobs and good income and then we go fuck it up, and then they're like, well, the alternative is chaos. So even if this is worse than where we started, chaos is always worse than that in people's heads. They just go fight or flight mode. So it just creating chaos squashes any type of resistance to these things, which the CIA does and has perfected over the years. On an individual level, in a group, as a nation.
They did an embargo, pretty much. So actually, on August 19th, 2013, the CIA publicly admitted for the first time to its involvement in the coup against Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh. The documents provided detail of the CIA's plan at the time. I want to look at the documents. What are you talking here? So I pulled up a document called Campaign to Instill Pro-Western Government in Iran. This is part of the stuff they released in 2013. Step 1, strengthen the Shah's will to exercise his constitutional power and to sign those decrees necessary to effect the legal removal of the Prime Minister. 2, welded together and coordinated the efforts of those political factions in Iran, fully influential clergy, those against Mossadegh. Step 3, disenchant the Iranian population with the myth of Mossadegh's patriotism by exposing his collaboration with the communists and his manipulation of constitutional authority to serve his personal ambitions for power. Conduct a war of nerves against Mossadegh, designed to reveal to Mossadegh and the general populace that increased economic aid would not be forthcoming and that the U.S. viewed with alarm Mossadegh's policies.
So they did that, and he didn't back down. So then they had a violent coup. He was like, "No, fuck this. I'm standing on business.
Look at this. Okay, the CIA.
These people elected me. My obligation is to them."
So part of the plan was a series of public statements by high U.S. officials implying that there was little hope that Mossadegh would expect increased U.S. aid. And here's number 2 of that part, of this new part. And then U.S. press and magazine articles critical of Mossadegh and his methods.
Critical of the democratic process.
I just think it's interesting that they just admit they can publish articles
propaganda
at will. There it is. That's the plan. We overthrew the Iranian government. Now they're our sworn enemy. We're still bombing Yemen as of today. I didn't realize that's been going on 10 days now. I'm not saying the government of Iran is good, but you can kind of understand where the people are coming from.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts?
Always disappointed, never surprised.
More in disappointment than anger.
Yeah.
I mean, I actually will be pretty angry if we get nuked.
Well, yeah, that'll be upsetting.
Because we can't be normal. We had to protect British petroleum. What are we doing anyway? Okay, so I heard today, you know about that leaked group chat for the war or whatever?
Yeah.
Maybe fake. But in the chat, J.D. Vance says, I'm not sure we should be doing this because only 3% of our trade goes through that strait, but something like 40% of Europe's trade goes through the strait.
Oh, yeah, that was a vibe. I didn't see him say that specifically.
Somebody said it in the chat.
Yeah.
Assuming it's real. Apparently the journalist has been discredited before. It might be fake. But essentially they were arguing in this chat that we should be extracting something from Europe for this. Because we're essentially doing it to help the European economy.
Yeah, we're extending our hand to... We're putting our lives on the line so they can have nice cheese.
Cheaper TVs or whatever. I don't know, man. Some things never change. Like and subscribe.